So I want to let you in on a little secret. I've been living with my very own life coach for 11 years. He's witty, he's direct, he's very blunt, and he's a stickler for time management. And I definitely need help with that in life. He's helped me navigate some of the most difficult moments in my life. Well, just in case you want to know a little bit more about him, I've decided to give you his information. It's right up here. By the end of this talk, you want to know about him, and this will be a way for you to connect with him. But I forgot to tell you one little thing. My life coach happens to be my son, Orlando, and he has autism. You know, he's brilliant. He can memorize over 150 people's birthday years, and even people he's just met, and retain it forever. But let's keep this little secret between you and I. Because if he knew that he's been doing this for free for 11 years, he's going to send me an invoice for every single time we've had a conversation. So, shh, don't let him know. And back to that website, well, it's under construction because, hello, he can't legally work yet. So, but on a more serious note, when we think of autism, we think of a very challenging condition. We think of something that's very difficult. And I'm here to tell you, it is difficult. How do I know? Well, I lived it. We lived it. We still live it every single day. I've walked this journey for many years now with many special needs families. And I'll tell you this, we all have something in common. The day that we received the diagnosis, our lives changed forever. You see, my son was a beautifully perfect little boy when he was born. But sooner than later, at about the age of 2, I started to see a regression in him. He stopped talking, he stopped connecting, he stopped giving me eye contact, and then all of a sudden, he started doing repetitive behaviors. And some of these behaviors led to self-injurious behaviors. If you've never seen a sensory meltdown, it's really difficult to watch because you feel helpless. In 2010, I walked into the office of a specialist. I needed a way to help my son, so I needed information. The specialist observed him for about 90 minutes, and then soon after, she walked into the room, and she had a conversation with me, and it went a little something like this. Ms. Cano, just so you know, your son has no idea who you are. He uses you to meet his basic needs. He may never speak. And just so you know, there's no cure for autism. I hate to admit this out loud, but in that very moment, my inner light completely turned off. No mother or father wants to feel like they are unwanted or unneeded. I started to have all kinds of doubts and fears. You see, Orlando was my firstborn, and we were supposed to conquer the world together. But all these fears were filling my head. Would he ever go to college? Would he ever say, Mom, I love you? Would he live with me forever? Then I thought, I can't die. Who's going to take care of him when I'm gone? But those fears started to shift little by little into something different. All I needed to do was look into those big brown eyes to realize that he was worth fighting for. And I would say the following to him, my son, no label or diagnosis will ever define you. You are capable of anything you put your heart to. So those fears started to shift. They became determination. I went to every conference in and outside of the state of Texas, every workshop that I can get my hands on. You see, I started to look into it. I had no idea that in some cases with autism, the gut is the second brain, and that my son had some underlying medical conditions that were also hindering his progress. I did special needs diets. We did holistic approaches. These things were working for him, and slowly but surely, he was coming out of his fog. You see, my life coach was starting to teach me things, even when he couldn't speak. Life lesson number 1 that my unconventional life coach taught me. Work at your own pace. You are exactly where you need to be right here, right now. As a special needs parent and family, oftentimes we need to make a lot of sacrifices. My husband and I decided that we needed to relocate to a neighboring city, in this case, San Antonio, because unfortunately at the time, the Rio Grande Valley didn't have the necessary strategies and the necessary resources that we needed for my son to continue to thrive. And I had a dream for him. I wanted him to be a productive citizen of the community and to be his best self. So we left everyone behind, our church, the grandparents, the family, the schools. My husband came and went every weekend for 2 years. It was difficult. But 2 weeks after moving in, I got a knock on the door. Sweet little boy named Dylan, a neighbor. He comes in, he goes, "Hey, I heard you have kids. Can they come out and play?" And my initial reaction was like, no, absolutely not. No way. You see, what if he judged my son? What if he didn't understand that he was almost 5 and he still only spoke in 2 to 3 word phrases? What if he figured out that my son didn't know how to be a friend because he hadn't gained that skill? He had no idea how to connect. He didn't understand the value of human interaction. I let it go. I said, "Go ahead, of course, come on in." They started having a great time. And like clockwork, every day after that, Dylan would come over at about 4 o'clock and ask to play with my child and his sister. Well, one day he said, "I want to ride bikes with Orly." And I said, "Oh, goodness, we've tried tricycles, we've tried big wheels, we've tried no wheels, some wheels. You can try." Well, something magical happened that day. For the first time ever in my son's life, he rode a bike. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. That's not exactly the way you're supposed to ride a bike. But hey, he had a helmet, and he was riding a bike. And Dylan was riding it for him. But in the end, he was working at his own pace. And he was exactly where he needed to be with his friendship. Sometimes they wouldn't even talk, but they were friends. You know, I don't think Dylan understands the level of impact he had in my son's life. He was his first friend. Thank you, Dylan. By the same token, I had been a broadcast reporter before I had my son. And before that, I was also a teacher. And I had to put my career on hold because I knew that my son needed me to be there with him at home, healing him. And I realized then that we were both going at our own pace. Even though I wasn't being a professional at the time, guess what? I was embarking on the biggest job of my life. Lesson number 2 that my unconventional coach taught me. In life, be direct and ask for what you want, and also be specific. Anytime that it hits Friday, my son is ready to go to dinner. You see, he is a total foodie and a very diplomatic, courteous young boy. The kid who couldn't speak till he was 5 is now fully conversational. He's 11. We walk into the restaurant, and he likes to be in the front, so he goes directly to the hostess, and typically this is what happens. Yes, he flirts a little because he's a boy. And then once we sit down, he asks for the waiter, and he's very sweet. He usually accepts their name tags. "Hi, John. How are you today? I'd like to order 3 waters and an unsweet tea for my mom. Oh, and while you're at it, I'm ready to order my meal. I want a 6-ounce sirloin steak with a baked potato, butter, no sour cream, okay, extra bacon bits, and a pinch of Himalayan salt." He literally does that. So most people think, that's interesting. He knows exactly what he wants today. And what happens next? You guessed it. They get his order right. Like clockwork. If for some odd reason they don't get his order right, what happens is that the chef comes out, and then all of a sudden, we have a new meal and comp dessert for the table. And who doesn't like dessert? So he's direct, and this is why it happens, because he's asking, and he knows what he wants. And sometimes it comes off a little bit, like he's much older, but I think what happens is that he just knows it, and what ends up moving on is that in life, when we ask for something, sometimes we tend to be fearful. Don't be afraid. Ask for what you want. By the same token, my inner light was starting to flicker a little more as my son progressed. So I decided to start working independently as a parent advocate. I was going into the school districts to help parents with their special needs programs. And so one day, I'm in a meeting with an administrator from a district, and he asked me, what can we do to make my special education program better? And what I said was, what would my coach do? Be specific, ask for what you want, and don't sugarcoat it. So I said, listen, your special education parents whose native language isn't English aren't getting professional interpreters. And one, I hate to tell you, that's against the law. Number two, you're not providing them with fully equal access information, so they're not being meaningful participants of these meetings. And to my surprise, he said, done. What else? So in life, ask for what you want and be direct. Life lesson number 3 that my coach taught me. Pursue your passion with no apologies. It may lead to your life purpose. When my son was very little, he was obsessed with Legos, and he was obsessed with transportation. And with autism, they get fixated and they just want to do something religiously. But what's really cool about that is that they become walking encyclopedias. So if you ever need anything about that topic, just go ask them. And so most recently, this last 2 to 3 years, he's been highly obsessed with law enforcement agencies. Oh, yeah. So for every Halloween, he's dressed as either SWAT, FBI, firefighter. He finds a way. Military, border, ICE patrol, it doesn't matter. And just the other day, he had my husband drive him 45 minutes to Harlingen, Texas, to get books on ballistics, forensics, and criminology. When he sees an officer, the first thing he says is, hello, sir, and thank you for your service. And then they take him to the K9 unit, and then he pushes all the gadgets, and by the time I know, he's sounding off at the sirens. But you know what I can tell you about Orlando? Is that he knows exactly what he wants in life. He's pursuing his passion. And I know that in one shape, way, form, or capacity, one day he will work for San Antonio PD, because that's what he says. And I don't doubt it, because he's laser focused. I knew that the natural progression for me was to move on into the disability advocacy world when I wanted to jump back into a profession. But I had doubts and fears because, you see, I hadn't studied the disability profession as an education in life. And so my life coach taught me that expertise and training in this field and all those countless hours that I was in the trenches with these families pretty much equaled the PhD in disability studies that I wanted. This newfound purpose and passion in life led me to a wonderful opportunity. Just this last year, I was nominated to serve on Governor Abbott's Committee for People with Disabilities. Thank you. It's a state committee that is composed of adults with disabilities, advocates, and self-advocates. We get to travel the state. It's a really neat opportunity because I'm learning from adults with disabilities that if we want to make changes for people with disabilities, we need to talk to people with disabilities. I know it sounds like common sense, but we don't do it. This here is my friend Austin Underwood. He is an entrepreneur and the owner of the Underdog Hot Dog Mobile. And he is, he wants to expand his business and make it a franchise. I know that if he was to come down to the Rio Grande Valley, that we would all eat his hot dogs, right? So I'll put in a good word. People with disabilities have a lot to offer. They're part of an untapped market, very talented market, and they bring value to the table. This last couple years, I've been walking hand in hand with a sea of parent advocates, special needs families, and their beautiful children. And together, we've been creating systemic changes in the Rio Grande Valley. We are a movement now. It's beautiful to see. Thank you. Suddenly, school districts, city governments, and different entities are reaching out because they want to make their businesses more diverse. They want to make them more accessible and more inclusive. But I'll tell you this, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, only 19.1% of people with disabilities worked in 2018. And that's an alarming statistic that needs to change. It really just starts with us, with one conversation and one vision. I want to leave you with some final notes on my journey as a disability advocate. I thought I was building a movement for people with disabilities in my community. But in reality, my life coach was shaping, building, and healing me from the inside out. You see, everyone can reignite their inner light when it's been turned completely off. All you need is a little bit of inspiration. Historically, people with disabilities have been shunned, they've been abandoned, they've been ignored, and they've been made to feel like they are less than us. In July 26th of 2020, we're going to be embarking upon the Americans with Disabilities Act's 30th anniversary. The law was put into place to prohibit discrimination against people with disabilities and also to remind us that they deserve equal access to everything in our community. I'm happy to report that the Rio Grande is finally moving in the right direction. So this is what I want to let you know. See the able in everyone you meet. They are people first. If you give a person with a disability an opportunity, you might just meet your new best friend. You might just meet your future employee of the year. You might just meet, if you're lucky like me, your very own life coach. Thank you.